Welcome to CS1010S PE2 Compilation. Today we are going to attempt question 10, which is the last and also a data analysis problem. As such, with all data analysis problems, our first step is always going to download the CSV file as well as the template file and questions, which I've already done. First, we take a look at the CSV file, where a few things to keep track of is the header row, which gives us all the column names, uh, which is going to be important, and know that the following rows have data where each index represents that column. For example, this is this row, the second is the name of the university. So that is important. We can also understand the data better by looking at the description which is given in the question, where we know the data type that each of these columns hold as well as the descriptions. We also keep note that the data type stir is going to be case sensitive. So uh, keeping that in track as well as the general assumptions and restrictions is necessary before you start diving into a problem. We also take a look at the template file where the read CSV function has been predefined for us. We do not need to know how it works, and it will be given in the appendix for you to refer to. One important thing that I've done is also keep a track of all the columns as well as their index number. This legend helps me always reference it whenever I try to parse through the data, and I'll know which particular entry will hold the data. One thing that you can also try is that when you run the read CSV function, and I try to take a look at, for example, the first 5 rows, I see that it is a list of lists where each row is going to be a row in the CSV file, and each data is a string, even those which in our original CSV file were of int type. So I'll keep a track of these. So first, trying to go through this helps us know that what kind of data I'll work with after I've read my data using the read CSV function. With that, I think we are ready to get started with the first question, which is to implement a function get univstat, which takes in 3 inputs: the file name, excuse me, the university, as well as the year. And what we need to do is to return the number of teams from the university that participated in the competition in the given year. And if the university has not participated in the competition in the given year, then the function returns 0. Whenever you think of a problem, try to break down into simpler sub-problems. So here, the first I can come up with basically 2 sub-problems is to filter the records for the given university and year, and then I return the number of those records. So this is going to be our 2 sub-problems that we'll need to solve. Before doing any of that, let's just read in our CSV file, which I know is going to be a list of lists. Each element is a row of the data. I'm writing this one time so that it stays in our mind for the rest of the problems as well. So for filtering the data for the given university and year, we can use the filter method that we have learned previously. So for doing that, we can determine a rule which we can use using our lambda function. So now we want the row to have the university as the input as well as the year of being of the type input. So we know that the university will be present at index 1 for each row, and we check that with the university. And we also need to check if row 3, which has the year, is equals to the year. But one difference that you'll need to keep track of is that when invoking the functions, we see that the input is of type int. However, in our data, the year still exists in form of string. So to bypass that problem, I'll just convert the input to a string and check it that way. Now I can get the records using a simple filter function, applying rule on the data. One thing that you need to remember is that filter returns a filter object, so you'll have to convert it into list. After doing that, to return the number of those records, it's quite simple. We all know the len function will give us this. It's always good to check your problems. I'll run the first few test cases and see that I'm getting the right. With that, we are done with the first question. The second problem is kind of similar. It asks us to get the number of distinct universities for the given site and year. But one thing that you'll to uh, keep track of is that the universities for a given site and year still might be uh, after fetching the records for the site and year, the university still might not be distinct as each university has different teams. So we'll have to put that as one of our subproblems. So again, defining our subproblems is to first filter out records for given site and year. After we've done that, we find all the unique universities, and thirdly, it's simple, we return the number of such universities. So again, the first problem is something that we have already encountered and is easy for us to solve. So here my rule is going to be again a lambda function. So for each row I want to check that it's of the correct site and of the correct year. When I go back to my legend, I see that site exists in index 2. So row 2 equals to site, and row 3 equals to store here. I keep note that read CSV will convert all of the data into strings. So then I can get the records again by using typecasting the filter object and applying the rule to my data. After I've done that, I have all the records which are from that site and that year. Now I want to get all the unique universities. So to do that, I loop through the records and then I check if I have seen that university already. So for that, I create a new list unifs which will hold all the unique universities. So for row in record, my university will be existing in position 1. So after I've gotten this, I can just check if university in unifs, then I can just continue, else I'll add that university to my unique list. So basically, re-explaining this if else statement is that after I fetch the university for a given row, I check that it is an university that I've already seen. If it is, then I continue. I do not need to add it to my list of unique universities, or else I append it. So this univs list after the end of the for loop will contain the list of all unique universities. So my second subproblem is now solved. Finally, to return the number of such universities, all I need to do is to invoke the unique function on my univs list, and this should solve the problem. Again, we'll run a few test cases to see if this works correctly. So I made a spelling mistake. We defined records, and so keep track of this as well. These are mistakes that happen normally. So running this, checking this on glide before you go on and submit on cosmology is something that you can do as well. So We are done with the two simpler problems of this question. Question 10C, however, is longer and needs us to focus on the question before we get started. We need to implement a function top k teams which takes in three inputs: the file name, the site, and k. K here is going to be a positive integer. Now we want to return a dictionary in this format, that for each year we want the k top teams. We'll learn the ranking criteria later using the algorithm, but already I know that I'll have to group the data by year, that is have data distinct data for each of the following years. Now the key we need to make sure that is of integer data type, and the value team info is going to be a tuple with these 5 column data stored inside it. And then after I have found the data for all these, I need to then rank them and find the top k teams following these three criteria. So keeping track of this, I'll just put all the sub problems down. So find all records for the given site, because we'll have to first find all the records for that given site that is given to us. Next, I want to shape the data into the required format, that is I want it to have year, and I want to have team info 1, team info 2, and so on for all of the years. Let this be year 1, then year 2, and data for it as well, and similarly for all of the years. So this is the format that I need to get my data in. After I have done that, I need to rank the teams based on criteria. So when you read the algorithm that's given to us, we need to rank the teams firstly by the number of problems solved. So first by solved column, and we see that the teams with the highest number of problems have the higher rank. So this is basically in descending order, because the teams with the higher number of problems solved will be ranked higher. Then if two teams have the same number of problems solved, then we rank them by time penalty, which is the penalty column for us. And here the teams with the lower penalty will have higher rank, so this is ascending. And finally, if those two have the same values, then we check for the last submission time, which is stored in the column last solved, and again this is going to be ascending. One thing that you'll also need to keep track of is that all of the team info here is of this type, is of this type. It's a tuple which has information stored in this way. After I've done those, I'll have to find top k teams, and I'll have to follow the 1 2 to 4 ranking system. That is, if after finding the top k teams, if the last team and if the kth team has a particular data and the k plus 1th team also has the same data, I'll include it into the ranking as well. So let's get this done one at a time. The first sub problem is actually quite easy. We have done this a few times now. So again, we just read in the data using read CSV, and for the first problem, it's quite easy. Our rule is just going to be lambda row, and we already know that site is going to be at index 2. So I just check for that, and I find my records using list filter just filter according to the rule on the data. So this gives me the data for the particular site. The second problem is to shape the data into the required format. So my format is going to be a dictionary, right? For the second problem, I initialize a dictionary. So my dictionary is going to be res, I name it res, and this dictionary will loop through all the records and group them in by the form of the years. So for row in records, I know that I can get for each row, these are the 6 columns that I'll get. What are the columns that I'm interested in? So team will be row 0, university will be row 1. Then I want to know the year. Year is going to be row 3, but again we need to make sure that it get converted to type int because year is going to be of type int. I want solved, which is int row 4. My penalty is going to be int row 5, and finally my last solved is going to be int row 6. So for each row in the records, I fetch out the data, and now in my res column, the key is going to be this. The key is going to be year. So I check if that year in res dot keys already. If it like if you check if it is not in res dot keys already, then we initiate the key in the res dictionary, and we see that the data type we want to have for each key is a list of all the team infos. So this is just handling the case where the year does not already exist in the rest of keys, but if it does exist, then we need to append the team info for that particular row. So I'll just create the team info dictionary. We know that it is going to be university, then team, then it is going to be last solved, it's going to be penalty, and it's going to be solved. This is the structure that we need to have for our team info. So I'll just copy paste that here. So this is the structure my team info needs to follow, and I can just append this tuple to the list that I created in case uh, the key does not already exist, or if it already does, then we can just use the append function. After running through this entire loop, I'll have the data shaped into this required format. So now my res is of this format. I just keep track as I go through the different subproblems so I don't miss or uh, forget how my data looks like. After doing this, we need to go on to question our third problem. Our third problem is going to be ranking the teams based on these 3 criteria. So to loop through a dictionary, a very useful function is to have this res.items function. What res.items returns is a list of tuples, and each tuple will have the key and the value teams info. So basically this is a list which will have team 1 info, team 2 info, and so on for each of them. So year 2 and its corresponding teams info and so on. So this is what res.items return, and I use the tuple unpacking to get the year and teams info. So teams info here is going to be a list and year is going to be the key. Now I want to sort. So ranking is basically a form of sorting, right? I want to sort them according to these 3 criteria. So I want to sort my team's info list according to these three criteria. Let me just copy paste this down again. So these are the three criteria that I keep track of. Okay, so my sorting rule is going to be, for each team info that I get, I want to sort it first by the number of problems solved, then by time penalty, and then by last submission time. So let's look at the data structure of the team info, which we just created, right? So team info is going to be of this structure. This is the structure for my team info. I want to first sort it by the number of problems solved. So whenever you try to create a sorting rule, the key you can put it in order of which columns you want to sort by. So first I want to sort by solved, which is at index -1. We can use negative indexing, or if you start 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's going to be at index 4. Now another thing that you need to keep track of is that here I want to solve it in descending order. So when creating the sorting rule, if you put a negative sign, it will sort it in descending order, because negative numbers work just opposite to how positive numbers work. After I've sorted by the number of problems solved, I can then sort by the time penalty, which is going to be at index 3. Now here it's in ascending order, so I do not need to put a negative sign. And lastly, I want to solve the number of I want to sort by the last submission time, which is also going to be in ascending order. So this is the sorting route that I need to follow. So I create a new list which will sort this team's data, team's info, which will sort this list according to this key. So my key is going to be sorting route. So this now holds the team's info sorted according to the ranking criteria that was given to me. One more thing that I can just get it done here itself is to find the top K teams. So finding the top K teams. How can I do that? So you have to first handle a few of the base cases. What happens if K is negative? That is when you return an empty list, right? Now, if the other case is that if K is greater than the len of T, like the number of teams that we have, in that case, all we need to do is return T K, right? However, there's one more case, is that if len of T is going to be less than K. Here, what we need to do is to check the kth team and find its data, and then check it with the K plus 1th team, and keep adding that team into our required list that we need to return. So a good way to do this is to use a while loop. So what I do is, instead of changing the list itself, I change K, and I keep on adding teams at the end till I reach the required number. So I check that while K is less than len of T, I find the last data. So what are the three criteria that I need to test by? These three. For another team to be considered into the ranking, to be included in the top K, it will have to have these three columns having the same values at as the K minus 1 at uh, as the kth position in our current ranking, in our current sorting, right? So this is the data. This is the data for the kth position team. Now I check if the k plus 1th position team has the exact same data. If the k plus 1th team has the exact same data, then I can just add it to my uh, add it to my top k teams. I stop as soon as this if statement breaks, right? So whenever I find a team that no longer has the same data as the data for the kth position, our current kth position, then we stop. That is when we break. And now my k is in that position that will take the top k. So this return statement is actually for this case as well as this case. Hope that makes sense. And when we try to run this for a few of the examples, where have we gotten it wrong? It gives false. We can just check what this gives to understand what mistake we made. uh, we are not supposed to return the list itself, although what we need to do is to change the res year to that particular list, because now this holds the top k teams for each year, and at the end we have to return res. These kind of mistakes are quite common even when you are trying to solve the problem. So always keep track of what your final return type is. Try to look at the solutions that are given to us, and I'll remember that this is the final format that I need to return the data in. And after I run this, I should get through, and